Hey,
Hey Marta, how are you? Say
I'm
hi.
well. Oh my gosh, hello, who's that?
She's my greatest spiritual teacher, so I had to bring her on to say hi.
What's her name?
Her name is Elle. Elle, look at the camera.
Oh, she's so pretty. I wish I had my puppy. If I were home, I would show you my Daisy. I have a really cute dog.
Yeah. Well, animals, they tend to be some of our greatest spiritual teachers because they're some of the best at just being, and so we can really learn from them.
Yeah.
So she's somebody that she's my girlfriend's cat technically, but I'm planning on stealing her. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, welcome. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
For everyone who's hopping on here, I've been looking forward to this conversation with you for some time, Marta. I've been following you, I'd say, just observing your journey and, read your book, and I've been following your path through Instagram, and somebody that personally has really inspired me because I felt that you're somebody that really beautifully integrated so many of the spiritual principles and lessons into daily life and bringing the being into the doing by merging these two dimensions. So excited to spend a few minutes, half hour or so talking, sharing your story, our stories with our communities, and just seeing where it goes. As always, these chats are unscripted. There's no predetermined agenda, really flowing through the unknown into the now and seeing where it goes. So welcome.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your kind words. And thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk to you. And I think unscripted is the way to go, so we can just allow our hearts and our souls to lead the conversation wherever it might go.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe if it's okay with you, what I was thinking was, putting you on the spot, just passing the baton to your side. I feel like you've been so active and you've done so much in your life so far, and you have such an incredible story and journey. I would love if you just would be willing to dive in, start where you want, to share how your life has progressed in the context of the awakening journey and how you came into authorship in regards to the awakening journey, coming out of such a big, impressive business background. So would love to just kind of hear from your perspective, anything and everything that you're willing to share.
Sure. Well, I'm an open book. That's why I wrote the book. But I guess I would love to start just by saying that I kind of fell into this soul-led way of living by living the other way, led by the physical and by the material, and finding it unfulfilling. And maybe at the time I wasn't so wise as to know that that's what the struggle was, but I found myself 10 years ago when I turned 39, living the dream life from the outside. I was married very happily, still am. I had two beautiful children that I still do. They're now adults. And my husband and I had just sold our business, which we started maybe a decade prior. It was a travel company, which we launched from, before the internet was a big thing in the early days. And we grew it and we built it together. It was always, we refer to it as the third child. They always say, go work for yourself because there's so much freedom. And what happens is you work all the time.
Yeah.
And so, we lived and we breathed it, and we grew it together, and we had just sold it. Someone came in and said, we love what you're doing. We would love to buy you out. And it provided us with enough financial resources to, not work for a while. And we had just moved to Paris, France, which was a place I had always wanted to live. I'm originally from Poland, which is a whole other story. And so there I was, you know, retired at 39, financially set, married, kids, a member of a beautiful community in a church, in this international community, you know, people from everywhere. And it was so great, except there was something on the inside that was calling me to more. And I think for a long time, I tried to ignore that invitation. And my favorite way of ignoring the call of the divine is to stay busy. I love to stay busy and do things. I love to do things. So I didn't know how to be still. And, you know, so I volunteered and I did a lot with the free time I suddenly found myself with. And it just felt like life was not going to give me a plan B. And the way that God got my attention is by basically inviting a massive breakdown. And so I stopped working, you know, running and building the business for over 10 years. It had defined me, right? It became who I was. So I knew myself as entrepreneur, an executive, as a hardworking mom, raising 2 kids, you know, doing a lot. And when I sold the business and found myself stripped of that identity, I was lost, not wanting to see it. I stayed busy, but I felt like God was just relentless. And so I found myself on a beautiful Caribbean island, which is how I opened my book, on a lovely, amazing trip to paradise where we went with our family to celebrate the sale of the business, where I had what I thought was an experience of, you know, nearly dying. I had a massive panic attack, which was my first ever. I wasn't even aware of anxiety. It was not too busy to notice any of that in my body. And I found myself with a racing heart, with the inability to speak. I started to go numb. I started to lose feeling in my fingers and my toes. And then panic and fear kicked in. I ended up in the hospital on a Caribbean island. And they said, well, we don't know. You're going to have to go back and have some more tests. And so we flew back to Paris. And so that was sort of the, you know, how I just stopped in my tracks, like got off the treadmill, got off the, you know, the wheel, not because I thought it was a great idea, but because I simply couldn't sustain. It was my body gave out from under the weight of it all. And so I went back to Paris, and, you know, I have just enough family history of early strokes. My grandmother died when she was in her late 40s, and heart disease, to think that this indeed was my time. And while doctors struggled trying to figure out what happened, I lived with panic attacks daily, sometimes twice a day. And each time I was convinced this was going to be the one that was going to take me. I mean, it was horrible. Depression settled in, like fear, terror, and panic all coming up from within me. And it took a really long time to understand, because I couldn't comprehend it. Like, I was not afraid. I was fearless. I was a leader. I was a warrior. I had immigrated from Poland to the States when I was 12, 13. I had discovered the American way, built the American dream. I built this massive company with my husband. I was not afraid. What was this feeling? All of a sudden, couldn't sleep. Terrors and old memories started to come up, and it took a while to understand that it was the past coming up, and the invitation was, okay, you've lived the life on the outside, right? Like you've done the things, you've achieved, you pursued, you've become, but in that pursuit, you've completely disconnected from the true self, right? And so it was simply an invitation to reconnect, to, as I call it, to come home. And so the panic, the terror, and of course I was making it worse, because was this something I wanted? No, I just wanted to take an antidepressant and wake up with my fairy tale life. But that was not the plan for me.
Yeah.
And so that's how the journey began 9.5, nearly a decade ago. And that was, wait, what? There's an inner life? Like, what is that? What, nobody told me about this, and I was almost 40. So that's how the journey started for me.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I feel like your story, Marta, is so powerful because it's so quintessential and relatable to what so many experience on this journey, except when you're somebody that is in call it a more influential worldly position, it's just how the cookie crumbles that it tends to have more weight. Like Jim Carrey, as an example, is somebody who, had all the fame and success in the world. And, for someone like him to come forward to say, it's not what life's about, it's not going to make you happy, it's not the answer. And for him to turn inwards and for him to lean into the truth after having it all, people tend to listen and hear. So that's where, you in particular have such a powerful voice, having built such a large, massive company, one that frankly I didn't even know was yours, because I looked at it in the past, and was looking to use it to book Caribbean trips.
Yeah.
So for you to go through this experience as well, and something I've gone through too in my own way, in my own version, I think it's like we have enough evidence now to be able to say, okay, let's actually look in to see what's going on here and lean into the unknown, look inwards and take that journey. And I always think it's funny too, because it always tends to happen when you feel like, you're on top of the world or something. You just sold your business, like you're celebrating in the Caribbean, and then boom, the universe smacks you in the face and it's like, nope, this is not the truth. Yeah.
Yeah. And, at the time looking back, it's so poetic and such a, classic path to how it all works. But at the time, it's just shocking and it's terrifying. And there's such a lostness in it, because everything, we over-identify with what we do and the roles that we play and the things that we have. And if those things defined how the world works for me and who I am in it, if I'm being asked to release that, to let go of that, that's like a death, right? And that's by nature the last thing that we want. And so, like I said, I went kicking and screaming, and we cling tighter, right? When life is like, okay, let go, you do the opposite, right? Like it's clenched fists.
Right.
And no, because if not this, then what? And it is so poetic to be like, to surrender into the unknown, but in reality, it's a horrifying process. And I feel like, the mystics write about it so beautifully, and poets speak of it, in such beautiful romantic language. But I want normal people to know, like, hey, that thing that you're waking up with, that you're taking, pills for, that you maybe haven't have a couple of glasses of wine for, or whatever your, choice of numbing is, like, that is a perfectly normal part of the human experience. And you can only deny, we're mind, body, and spirit. And you can only deny the spirit, the soul part of who you are for so long, until the soul's like, all right, I've been gently knocking, but you seem to need, more of a smacking. And I think it's, it's different for everyone, but I feel like because where I was in my life when I got the invitation was successful, well-established woman, right? I feel like my experience has been that it's so hard for us, because you know, I built a company, like I was doing great. Like, so the world was, you know, telling me that like, this is the formula. These are the things, you have all the things, you get all the things, you will be happy. And so, and the world is telling you, you're doing amazing. Like everyone was like, oh my God, wait, you live in France and, you
Yeah.
know, and so you're like, I know, right? It sounds great. And then you think you're the crazy one because inside, something's not quite right. And so I just want to like raise the volume on that conversation to be like, yes. And that is perfectly normal because I don't believe we're meant to find satisfaction in the external things, right? It's
Yeah.
always,
Yeah.
always within. Yeah.
We have to remember that we are fundamentally spiritual beings, secondarily having a human experience, right? Consciousness expressing itself temporarily in the human vessel,
Yeah.
the, you know, our form. And, you know, I think you nailed it on the head too, Marta, when you talk about that state of disconnectedness from who we truly are. And if that is sustained, that disconnected state is sustained over time, chronically, that's when depression really sets in. And how depression gets more severe. The longer you stay in that disconnected state, you know, away from home, you get homesick. and that's what manifests as sickness on the mental and physical planes. But, you know, they're symptoms of a spiritual illness that Western doctors are trying to treat at the level of symptom, not the level of cause. So I'm an advocate through Awakenpedia and through my efforts in this space to try to re-educate and inspire the future of medicine that is more holistic and comprehensive in terms of an energy-first solution that's treating at the level of cause and not symptom, so that we can actually have a more intuitive sense of healing and treating at that level. Because if things were working, we would be getting better and the data would be showing that. But instead, the data shows that we're getting more sick. Addictions at all-time highs, mental illness itself, all-time highs, suicide, overdoses. We are disconnected from who we really are. And I think people like you, stories like yours, like mine, coming on lives like this, sharing, you know, being vulnerable, writing books, continuing to put your true self out there is one by one going to ultimately shift the collective frequency into the new earth and help us to raise the entire vibration of our species. And I think this is the next phase of evolution for humanity, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, we're not just so disconnected from ourselves. I really feel like in this age of, you know, we're more connected than ever because look at us, like we could be anywhere in the world and here we are talking to one another. But there's such a disconnection at a deeper level from not just ourselves, from each other, and then from, you know, this truth that there is a greater force out there, call it God, call it universe, call it whatever, source, that's orchestrating things, you know, like we just think that it's all about us and we have to make it happen and we have to do, and that puts tremendous pressure on us to perform. And so we do instead of be, we hide behind masks, we project, you know, we come all neatly packaged up. And, you know, we end up building these heavy walls around our hearts. And that to me is just so sad. And, you know, when my walls started crumbling, it was so scary to live, you know, vulnerable because the last thing you want is, my God, living open-hearted requires that you are open to experiencing pain and getting hurt. And we've just been so taught to shield and to protect, you know, and by nature it's survival. We want to survive. But, you know, I just want to live with an open heart. And when we do that one by one, and me and you, and, you know, it's why I wrote my book. If you can see some similarities in my journey to what you're going through, if I can shed you know, if I can be a source of hope, you know, if really my big motivation was, you know, when my world fell apart, there wasn't anyone around me that could make sense of it. You know, that just wasn't a language that was spoken in my community. Like, oh yeah, journey inward. Like, I wanted to be that for people who came after and were like, what the heck's going on? You know, hey, I've been there, and here's how I made it. You know, here's what I've learned, and you don't have to feel so alone, because I think we have a tendency to then, you know, clean it up and not be messy and show up put together, and that's just really harmful. And so, you know, I now tell my story to small groups, and just to normalize the conversations about what is hurt, what is hurting, how our hearts are breaking. And you know, this whole culture of good vibes only, and you know, Instagram perfection, it's just not reality. We've normalized things that are not natural. And I think as human beings, I know I'm here to experience, you know, happiness but sadness, the joy and the heartbreak, you know, like, and everything in between. And so if I am the divine that gets to express itself through, you know, through my body, through this vessel, if my soul's biggest desire is to express itself, you know, can I be a large enough container for all the experiences that life brings my way as a human being? And that sometimes is pain and suffering. And to say, yes, bad things happen. We get to choose how we move through that. And it just is, if you can take a wider lens view and zoom out and see that there's a lot more going on than just the fact that you lost your job, which is horrible. It just makes life not such a roller coaster and not so chaotic, you know? So it's just having that wider perspective of, oh, wow. And also, we're in this together. So even though my heartbreak might be the details of how I hurt may be different than yours, our pain is universal. And you know, like, if we can, that's what unites us. And instead we hide it. And I'm like, can we start talking about it? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And what you're touching on there, a word I often use, is just being the watcher of your life, right? You're not the movie that's playing on the screen. You are the movie screen on which the movie is played. And so you realize that you are the witnessing presence that's observing this life unfold. And so, yes, you can experience sadness just as you can experience happiness without knowing that you're either of them, and still experience them in their totality. And I think that's like the beauty of the awakening consciousness. It allows you to more fully experience whatever it is you're going through, because you no longer carry the fear of getting lost in it or of it consuming you. And so it allows you to experience it more from a state of play as opposed to fear, right? And the other thing I wanted to comment on just quickly for diving into your next phase of your journey, and it's another Jim Carrey line, but when you're talking about depression and the state of disconnectedness from who we really are, Jim Carrey says, depression is your soul telling you it needs deep rest from the character that it's been playing, right? So these ego masks that we wear, trying to be this, you know, person of status, of image, upholding something, that it's just a role that we're playing, some type of caricature. When you stay in that role for so long and disconnected from who you truly are, that's when depression sets in, because you're, as we said, you know, so disconnected from the essence of your true self. And so you need to let go of the roles, of the characters, of the masks, and just be, you know? And that's where I think it's really important, like, to talk about courage too, and stepping into courage, leaning in, because I found for myself the willingness to lean into the darkness, to face everything, right? To talk about my struggles with addiction, to talk about my journey and how I've gotten here, and just kind of like publicly owning it and being more accountable in that way really allowed me to work through my shadow and to help get me to what I call not the other side, but just, you know, to start enjoying life again, to stop feeling like it's so burdensome and heavy and lost, you know, just that courage, that willingness to be courageous was so important in my journey and served as the launch pad that kind of just like sent me into the stratosphere of consciousness and led to me quitting my job in finance, completely repositioning my entire life, and leaning into truth and just knowing that this is my mission and the calling to help others to wake up and to help inspire a world of love so that we can cooperate with each other and not kill each other, and like learn how to coexist actually with the world and other life forms around us, as opposed to being so selfishly oriented that, you know, we live in this us versus them ecosystem that's not sustainable. So anyway,
Yeah.
what I want to say, or kind of just perhaps move into next, is like, for your journey, Marta. So you had your panic attack. You went through that, what I would call like a dark night of the soul experience that allowed you to see the light and embrace the light. Where did you go from there, right? So I know where you are now, but how did you get there, right? Like, what was that process for you, and how did you come into what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, it was very messy, and it was not a linear path, you know? It was not like this ascension. It felt very often like, you know, 5 steps backwards to take 1 step forward. For me, you know, because it was old trauma that was coming up, I needed to work through what I was repressing about my past and about my childhood. So for me, you know, I write about finding freedom. And really, it's freedom from the stories, or, you know, from whatever we inherit from generationally, and you know, our patterns and stuff our conditioning that we pick up as children. And I really, you know, that there was about a year into after my panic attack, I started therapy. I had never done therapy before. I started doing breath work. I didn't know that like that was a thing. Someone said, go to yoga. I didn't like it, but I started going. And so, you know, like they say, when the student's ready, the teacher would come. All kinds of modalities started finding me. And I was so desperate just to feel better, you know, like, yes, courage. But at the time, I just wanted to be better. I just wanted to end, you know, like for it to be over, the pain. And so I was willing to try anything. And in that, I think in that pursuit of just the suffering to end, I ended up stumbling into things that led to tremendous growth, not knowing it at the time, you know. So because it was old trauma that was coming up, I didn't realize that I was completely disconnected from my body, that I was living from my head all the time, thinking, analyzing, planning. Body, yeah. But I wasn't, you know, there wasn't this feeling of like, oh my gosh, this is a vessel that I've been given. It's through the, like, how do I care for it? How do I love it? I didn't even know how to be in it. So when pain started to come up, when old sadness or terror came, it scared me because I didn't know how to safely experience the fear. Like you talked about with that, I would constantly lose myself in it. I am afraid. No, I am the one experiencing the fear. Right? It would collapse me every time. And so really it was building resilience, right? And it was learning about trauma. I was learning about the window of tolerance and how I'm not supposed to push through things, but gently and slowly allow myself to tolerate a little bit more of that discomfort at a time. You know, discomfort, right? That's where all change happens. If you don't know how to be uncomfortable, you just want things to stay the same. And so learning that, oh gosh, this is what pain feels like. This is what sadness feels like. This is what anger feels like. And that it's all acceptable. that was a huge path for me. Like, so I think just the body for me was massive. So doing yoga, doing breath work, learning about the nervous system and how I was dysregulated all this time. You know, growing up under communism, I just embodied fear, and learning how to release that, learning that the body stores memories even if we don't remember them, learning that energetically I can release them, I can move that out of my system. You know, and then learning about the spiritual path, you know, reading the right book at the right time. So I just trusted that there was a larger something holding me. And I think we talked about this before a little bit, like, what is it? What is the thing that keeps us going? You know, when you just like on the floor of the bathroom thinking, I don't know if I can take another day, and yet you wake up the next day. And so I think in the times that I just felt like it couldn't get any worse, it was like this sacred love, which for me came through my children. You know, I was like, they need their mom, and whatever it is that I'm carrying, not wanting to pass it on to them, like that gave me the courage, you know, a mother's love for her children, wanting freedom, not just for me, but also for them. That got me through. And so it looked like that. And then it looked like, you know, a period of going on antidepressants because I just needed to get my legs back under me. You know, it looked like a period of relapse. It looked like signing up for, you know, PTSD retreat where I was with a counselor for 2 weeks, 5 hours a day. It just looked like experimenting. And I think that's a big, you know, it started for me as a healing journey. I thought I was broken and I needed to fix it, and then I would be cured and fine and okay. And so I was always looking for that next thing that would fix me. And then from healing, the journey really became this beautiful path of self-discovery, really learning who I was, why my human self was wired the way she's wired. What happened that made me think I'm never safe? What happened that made me, I can never trust people, I have to do things on myself? And then unwinding out of those stories, right? Like, so that's why the book is called Unraveling, like letting everything fall to pieces and then unraveling all the things that this is, you know, how often we say, well, this is just who I am. Why am I like that? Would I like to be some other way? Because that's available. I just need to choose it. And for me, especially as a trauma victim, learning that there's choice. If I can slow down enough to see that in every encounter, every moment, I have a choice on how to move forward with a massive sense of freedom, you know? And so, because with trauma, it's helplessness and it's stuckness. So seeing that if I can breathe in a stressful moment, come back into my body, ground myself where I'm at, get so slow that I can choose, who do I want to be in this moment? Who do I want to be moving forward? That all of a sudden it became exciting, because I was like, oh my gosh, wait, I'm not stuck. And, you know, I had a diagnosis of CPTSD. And for a while, you know, I wore it like a heavy vest. And then I was like, I think I'm just going to take it off. And I'm just going to choose to be well. And so, like, you know, just totally shifting how I started to see things. And then knowing that my story can help heal others, or help them see different, you know, like that this is somehow, I remember reading Joseph Campbell's, you know, A Hero's Journey, right at the time that I was laying out, what story am I telling in my book? And it was like, yes, that's the thing. It's like the golden elixir that I bring back from my journey. And it's like, I've suffered through a lot of things, and here's here's the alchemy of that pain. And here's then this beautiful treasure that I bring forth for those who are looking, you know? And so that now is sort of, I guess that's how I've gotten to where I am now, which is, you know, from the darkness, see the light, be the light. Like, how can I be the lighthouse for those who are seeking? And, you know, not because I figured things out or that I have the answers. My purpose is just to point you inward, because the answers you're seeking are in you already. So you're not following anything I'm doing. I'm not like the expert. I'm just reminding you of who you are so that you can hear the answers that are already there.
Yeah. So beautifully said. It's no wonder you wrote a book about it. So, I mean, and you say so many things that just like I'm so passionate about that I just am like, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So many, you know, and I think it's because you speak from source, you speak from the level of truth, and anyone who's aligned in that direction is going to resonate so deeply with this. But I think, you know, one of the biggest things that piqued my interest when you were talking about your healing journey, and something I experienced too as I went on my healing journey and kind of just came to understand what that even meant, and discovering the true self, and what facilitated my healing was realizing that we are already whole and complete and healed. And so as a result, it's a process of remembrance.
Yes.
And that process of remembrance manifests, or I should say, just kind of exhibits itself as an unconditioning, unlearning, or unraveling process, through which we're shedding all that we're not so that who we truly are can shine forth, right? And that's a messy, non-linear roller coaster of a journey that is beautiful and terrifying at the same time. But it's just, and that's the paradox of truth. But you know, it's what everyone in some version walks through, you know, as they go on this path. And so I think having people like yourself and stories where you can serve as that beacon of light is really, really important, you know, to be able to, especially just with your narrative and what, you know, not that the narrative matters much, but it's just, it's relatable. It's very relatable. And I think that's often what makes the best spiritual teachers. Not that we're teaching anything new. As you said, we're just pointing to the truth, you know, we're signposts, and we're pointing in the direction that ultimately you have to still walk in order to learn or really unlearn. So it's like, yeah.
I love that. I often talk about the journey of unbecoming. So,
Right.
you know, it's like the first half of life you spend, you spend your time becoming all the things that, you know, your parents tell you: be a good girl, be a good student, be a good whatever employee, be a good mother, be a good wife. So you're becoming all these things. And then, you know, so much of returning to who you truly are is the unbecoming. And so I write in my book about, you know, realizing that all those roles were actually hiding, right? Like they were actually preventing me from seeing the true self, because I was so over identifying with that as the I am, that I just couldn't see past that. And so but it is so scary, right, to just remove all that. But I do, and I talk about you know, healing being like peeling an onion, because I did think I was broken, and I did think there would be that one thing that would, you know, fix me. And then, you know, learning that actually, no, it's I am perfectly sacred and already whole, and sort of, you know, like it's like peeling the layers back of like all the things that I had become, pulling them all back, and really to reveal what's underneath that, which is, you know, it's one with the source, right? And it's just not a journey that's you know, promoted or highly praised in society. So we look like the weird ones. And that's why I'm like, hey, can we normalize it for quote unquote regular people? Like, it doesn't, you know, I do, when I teach my meditation, I put on a beautiful dress and I sit in a chair. Like, you don't have to be, you can be in your executive office and get on Zoom with me. You don't have to sit on a yoga mat if you don't like it. You don't have to, whatever, you know, whatever the excuses are to say this is not for me. You know, I'm like, it's for everyone. And so, choosing to share it, you know, in the places that I love to be, yeah, and just saying, this is the way that I bring it forth, and you find your way. You know, it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing, because it's all the same. We just dress it up in different ways.
Right. Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as Ram Dass says, you know, what you were pointing to, that we gotta become somebody before we realize we're nobody. And it's just that practice of like coming into form and identifying with the form to ultimately rise out of the form through realization of self as the formless. And it's such a beautiful paradoxical journey. But what you said, Marta, too, is why you inspire me truly on this path, because you're somebody that so authentically embraces the totality of who you are. Yeah, you don't, you know, you're not dressing in robes, sitting in a cave somewhere in the Himalayas.
Yeah.
You're on the cover of Forbes, you know, and like you're bringing that authentic spirit into business, into doing. And I really sense this is the next phase of existence for our species in order to survive. Like what? Otherwise, I think we'll just have World War III and like we'll all end each other. Like to bring love and authenticity into our business pursuits and what we do, into our creations, is the future of our species. And I think you're such a great role model for doing that, you know, and you lead by example, and you've shown that you can merge these two dimensions of existence, human and being. You can bring it together, and you can still go on nice vacations if you want. You can still sit in corporate offices or not. The point is, it doesn't really matter, right? It's like what matters is the foundation upon which the doing happens.
Yes, totally. And I think that's why a lot of the work that I do, you know, in my mentorship containers, it's like, it's identity work. Like, who are you? Let's strip all the, you know, peel back all the layers. And then once we rebuild, it's from a rootedness in I know who I am, and that is a soul having a human experience. But then, you know, if I am a sacred being, which I believe that I am, then I am abundant. So why would it be not okay or unholy for me to go to beautiful places and to wear beautiful clothes? You know, it's sort of like it's my inner beauty that shines forth, right, when I put on something beautiful. And so it's just giving permission also to people that need it, that like you can, like, it's okay. Like you said, you can go on a beautiful vacation, you can sit on a corporate office, but it's who are you when you're there? It's always about who are you being when you're there, because, and this is why I love to work with leaders, because I'm like, you have the capability to influence every single person, even if you don't work with them directly, because how we lead flows through the whole company, right? Even if you're not touching personally the people that buy from you or the people that sell your stuff, who you're being is reflected directly in your business. And so I just like to ask, you know, people that lead, well, who is that? And if you see these things that are broken in your organization, look in the mirror, because that's where it all comes back to. And that is just a thing a lot of people don't want to see. And that's okay. You know, I also always say, like, I am not for everyone, and that's okay. I don't like everyone I meet. Why should everyone like me? But for the people that get it, and for the people that desire it, like, I'm here. And I just feel like if I can shine my light brightly and bring forth my authenticity, the people that are meant to be in my circle, it's easier for them to find me, right? Because I'm just being myself. And so it's been interesting to see, like, it's how we met, you know. It's been interesting to see who then is, you know, who I magnetize or who's drawn to be in my community. And it's just been a really, really beautiful process for someone who, as a foreigner for so long, as an immigrant, as a refugee, felt that she didn't belong anywhere. And now people are like, hey, I want to be in your company. And I'm like, what? You know, so it's come such full circle, and it's such a beautiful, and also for a long time, you know, I didn't speak the language. And so, and also I learned in Poland, it's not safe to speak your truth. So for me now to be a vessel that gets to communicate all this, like, that, what a beautiful process, that, like, what freedom is found in that, that now I get to use my voice that was not safe to be spoken before in a language that's foreign, to reach people with a message basically of, like you said, you're whole, you're not broken, and you're actually loved. You just forgot.
Yeah.
I'm here to remind you, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we see things so eye to eye, which is, I think, what magnetized us, brought us together, and why I suspect we'll continue to expand this relationship, and we'll see how the unknown unfolds. But retreats, collaborations of sorts, all different types of things, I think, are in store for us.
That's good. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we share the same mission and the same vision, and we're using our respective platforms, communities, and avenues as providing roads to get to the same home, and in doing so, we're facilitating the exit out of our minds and into our hearts, and which that allows us to be comfortable in our own skin. And I really think that is so important today. A big part of my mission is to help address and prevent suicide, because my dad took his own life. And I really sense spiritual connectedness is the missing link in today's conversations around health and wellness, and in particular around suicide. So if we can help people to disidentify from that who they are not, so that they can then come to know who they really are, that unbreakable, infinite, eternal essence that's rooted in such power and stability and peace, it will transmute the suffering that is experienced at the level of mind as such a burdensome life into one that's now enjoyable, one they want to live. And that's the reason why, frankly, I've done everything I've done in terms of pivoting my life, because I saw what happened with my dad. I was going down a similar path in finance, was feeling similar feelings of just dissonance, frustration, meaninglessness, and it led me to my own suicidal ideation of, like, is this really a life I want to live? Because it felt so lifeless, because I was so disconnected from the source of life itself. And so this entire repivoting allowed me to reconnect with life, which restored my soul. And now I just want to be that light, same as you, to others, to help inspire them, to tell them, if they're on the brink as well, just peace is around the corner. The death you seek to end the suffering is one that exists on the level of mind, not your physical death. Just have to kill the ego, kill the mind-made self that's creating all these narratives in your head that's making you suffer.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same for me. It's, you can say everything that you just said, except for, my motivation wasn't suicide, but trauma. So it's the same exact. And I think, my husband, who was addicted to alcohol for 20 years of our, 20 plus year marriage, he now does spiritual counseling for people in addiction. And so it's the same answer, but it's like so I always call that the sacred doorway in, right? For you, it was the suicide of your father, and your own thoughts about it. For me, it was my trauma. For my husband, it was addiction, and sort of like, and then it's, what do we make of that story without over-identifying with, oh, this is what happened to me. And then it's just this beautiful, like you said, death of the ego, which is just difficult language for a lot of people. So I always try to soften that to make it more, relatable, and sort of that letting go of who you think you are. And then there's that beautiful rising from the ashes, right? That then, like, it's the phoenix rising. And then there are moments where I'm like, oh my God, like, I am unstoppable. I am limitless. And then of course, I forget. And, you know, like something happens and I have a crappy day and I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I read this beautiful quote somewhere the other day where it's like, you have to sometimes forget so that you can remember. That too is part of the beautiful design. Like if you just remembered all the time, there would be nothing to remember. So like how human and how beautiful of like the divine design to be like, okay, once in a while you're going to forget because you are fully human so that you can remember. And so it's being okay with the forgetting and the remembering. And, you know, and over time, hopefully the remembering just becomes more than the forgetting. But, you know, it's why we do the work that we do, because we need to remember too. And so if you're teaching others to remember who you are, you're often speaking to yourself. You know, I always say I teach soul care because I need it, and it keeps me connected. And so, it's beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm part of my, you know, I don't want to call it, I just like what I showcase and point to as well is that noticing the ego, as you're saying, is like the, you know, remembering after forgetting. That's success in this journey, right? Like the remembrance or the noticing of the ego is what serves to further dissolve it. And the more you can do that, the more you grow into your true self and the weaker the false self becomes. And yes, if there was no forgetting, there would be no remembering. And if I think, I forget who said it, but there would be no enlightenment if there was no illusion. And so the point is that, you know, illusion is a necessary part of this journey. And through disillusionment, we come into knowingness of what is true. So you got to be able to accept, and that's the value of suffering. That's and I just did a teaching on that. But that's the value of suffering. It serves to make you more conscious. It helps you to reveal the ego or the, you know, the self that you think you are. It serves to point to that so that you can further distance yourself from identifying with that mind-made self. And the more you disidentify from the mind in that way, the more loving you become. The more you just rise into oneness and exit the polarity of life and come into non-duality of what this existence is.
Yeah.
What comes next after that? I don't know. The edge of the mystery, when you step beyond that, I'm excited to see what comes after that. But I know this comes first, you know?
Yeah. And it's just, you know, I think for a lot of people, it's hard to hear there's purpose in your suffering because they're suffering. And so I think compassion and tenderness is such a big, you know, I feel like the ascension and you know, like here are the steps is still such a masculine way of moving through the awakening. And I just always am the reminder of like, there's the feminine too, and that's the safe and loving, tender holding of your human experience, because we can't avoid it. But if you're just, you know, following steps and disregarding the emotions and the sensations that are moving through you, then that's not integration, right? Like you're fragmenting still. So it's lovingly holding the pain and the experience. Someone said once, the ego is not something we should kill. It's something we should hold tenderly, like a child, you know, just to lovingly say it's okay, like it's okay. And I always remember that because it, you know, it is, we're still pursuing our awakening. And it's just, so like soft and slow forward is what I always bring myself back to and others to. Patience and kindness. Through the process.
Absolutely. You know, the ego is not your enemy. Right. You know, it's your friend. It's here to serve you.
So the language of killing, I'm always like, you know, like let's not murder anyone. That's never a good option. But right, it's the dissolving, right, and like holding it all in love in the end.
Yeah, shining the light of consciousness, the light of awareness on that which is dark. to help you work through the shadow. Not that the shadow is evil or negative, but just that it's preventing you from seeing who you are. And that's the, you know, the journey here that we do. Well, look, I know we're coming up on the hour, Marta, but maybe a good way to end this, wrap this up, would just be any, you know, last words of parting advice that you would give or want to share with those who have tuned in here, or in general who are on the awakening journey, maybe kind of just coming on the path, or whatever you would want to share.
Yeah, I think it's really important, the company that you keep, it's really important. So if you are someone who is going through or starting the path or feeling lost, surround yourself with people who have walked a few steps ahead of you, because they will pull you when you fall down, they'll pull you up. But that was crucial for me, is, you know, if something's not working, I stopped wanting to surround myself with people who complained about what wasn't working. But I wanted to be with the people who had already, you know, seen things differently. So like they say, you are the combination of the 5 people you spend most of your time with. Surround yourself with people that are already where you're looking to go. And then again, it's just that patience and kindness and tenderness. Like everything is running at such high speeds. I find it's completely unnatural. We've normalized it. And slowing down is tricky for most people because we don't know how to be still. And again, just to have patience there. But slow is the way to go.
Yeah. Wonderful.
That will be it.
Well, Marta, thank you so much. Honestly, a true pleasure and honor to chat with you. You are a well of wisdom, and I know that, you know, it was a divine intervention to shift you and your path into the light, to help inspire so many others, and to help others help heal themselves, you know. And I'm excited to see how your journey continues to unfold and how our paths intertwine and what comes from everything here. But thank you for hopping on here, for taking as much time as you did, and looking forward to future, you know, work together and everything in between.
Sounds good. Thank you, and thank you for everything you're doing and for so beautifully sharing your story and your heart. And I just appreciate being able to be with you. So thanks for the invitation, and thanks for this beautiful chat.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.